So let's talk through the 9 most expensive Warhammer 40K models that Games Workshop currently sells. Which are the miniatures that will make your wallet cry the most? Hello and welcome back to WarSpecs Tactics, where today we're talking expensive Warhammer 40k models, and in this video I thought we'd take a look at 9 of the models that are the most expensive offerings from Games Workshop currently, what they represent in universe, and what they do in game. As I'm sure most of you watching will suspect, the winners of this one are generally really big things cast in Forge World resin. Generally for any of the things that Games Workshop manufactures in plastic, they're usually aimed to be made at really quite big scale, so they want things that can sell to quite a lot of people. I believe the single most expensive plastic miniature that they sell are the Cerastus Knight models, the big tall boy knights that can be fielded in Warhammer 40k and Horus Heresy, with the Lancer, the Acheron and the Castigator, and these are all $210 or £125. Quite fun models, I think. I've certainly enjoyed painting up my Lancer, though it is kind of funny that these things are basically far cheaper than they ever used to be when they were made in Forge World resin. Even being about half the price as what they were before, they still managed to get to be the very most expensive single plastic model. Otherwise, for big box sets currently on sale, I believe it's the Horus Heresy Age of Darkness that wins here. This one's $315 or £195 for the Horus Heresy starter box. This one comes with quite a lot of Space Marines, plus the Horus Heresy rulebook and some dice and templates and things. And while it is certainly massively expensive for any one box of miniatures, compared with Games Workshop's normal offerings, it does have them at a better discount than most. I believe it's something like a good 50% discount or so if you wanted to pick up each of these kits separately direct from GW. There are a few limited run things that seem to come kind of close to that. It was interesting that the recent Knight Battle Group, with 2 Cerastus Knights, the Castigator and the Acheron, are $310 or £190, so just very slightly behind that Horus Heresy box set. So I guess technically this one's challenging as well for currently most expensive plastic kits. As mentioned though, to look for the most expensive Warhammer 40k models, we need to move up into the realms of Forge World. Games Workshop's fancy resin branch that specialises in detailed moulds of either really big stuff for the game or more specialist niche characters and pieces for other games like the Horus Heresy character series or Necromunda. Between the most expensive plastic kits and the most expensive Forge World kits, there's quite a gulf. Lots of things in the in-between, such as the Orc Gargantuan Squiggoth, the Tyrannid Harridan and Hierophant Reaver Titan, and Kabanda the enormous Bloodthirster. Getting properly into the most expensive Warhammer model kits out there though, and first up we have the Mastodon. This great big Space Marine armoured transport will set you back a massive $630 US, so just over £400 and €500. This one's a Titanic transport vehicle primarily aimed for Space Marines in the Horus Heresy, though it does have Legends rules. These things can transport 40 Space Marines or kind of hilariously 4 Dreadnoughts, which is pretty fun. And typically they were used in the Heresy for assaulting the most heavily armoured and well-defended enemy positions, an enormous great siege transport capable of shrugging off the harshest of enemy fire. The model itself is certainly a big centrepiece in the middle of a Space Marine army. It features a massive siege melter array that you can see here above the central doors, and they can open up to unveil its cavernous hold. After Games Workshop sent all of the Horus Heresy style 40k kits to Legends, it basically has Legends rules for 40k and is mainly aimed at the Heresy more now. You can field it with its datasheet though, where it gets some suitably impressive stats, a big toughness 14, which is fairly solid even for certain super heavies, a massive transport capacity, and the big siege melter array essentially hits as hard as 3 multi-melters chained together at 24 inches. Moving onwards though, in 8th place we have the Acastus Knight Porphyrion. This one is the biggest and heaviest class of the Imperial Knights, $685, £447 or €545. These are relic knights within their households, and one of the rarest chassis to take to the battlefield. Their Titanic firepower can make short work of other super heavies out there, and the Porphyrion itself is armed with Magna las cannons, designed to be a bastion of strength within the Knight Lance formation. It's kind of interesting that Games Workshop sells both this Porphyrion class and also the Asterius pattern of the Acastus class, and the Asterius is significantly cheaper to buy. I don't know if it's just literally because of the size of the las cannons versus the Grav Culverins. It does seem kind of weird that they'd be around about $60 different. Here's a size comparison of the Knight versus a standard size Questoris and a Cerastus. It does tower over them quite a bit and has really quite a lot more bulk. As you can see, a Contemptor Dreadnought only really gets knee high to it. In game in 40k, it's got current rules in the Imperial Armor Compendium, a big toughness 13, 2+ save Titanic unit, and between them those twin Magna las cannons will get 2d6 shots at strength 18, AP 4, and a crazy damage d6+6, and twin links means that you re-roll any wound rolls that you fail as well, which is kind of crazy. In normal games of 40k, you can basically near guarantee that you're going to just obliterate a couple of armoured targets each turn. Compared with basically anything else on this list, I feel like it's perhaps more playable in actual strong army lists than most, though still realistically just a bit impractical for 700 points at competitive 2000 point games. It's just a bit all or nothing and absolutely needs to take out huge chunks of the enemy army to make it worth it. Might be worth it if you're fighting against loads of enemy armour, but against, say, elite infantry or horde type matchups, it just might be overkill compared with getting more smaller knights, for example. Not technically a 40k model, so I guess it doesn't really count for the top 9, but while we're looking at the most expensive Warhammer kits, I thought I'd just stop off to mention Smaug the Dragon from the Middle-earth range. Easily the biggest single miniature that they ever made for that by quite a considerable margin. He's still available to buy at $690, £437 or €540. I believe they made him at around about the same sort of time as the Hobbit films were coming out, a dragon of pretty titanic proportions, trying to style him in a similar sort of way to how he appears in the films, and he has a scenic base with his treasure trove and Bilbo hiding on it. In the model description on Games Workshop they say that he weighs around about 2.4 kilograms and is around about 9 inches high, really quite a hefty chunk of resin there. Here's a picture of his box and a couple of other pictures of the miniature and Bilbo hiding out. Probably not exactly meant to be an in-game piece quite as much as a display piece here, though I think he is kind of fun. Back to the 40k list proper, and in 7th place we have the Warhound Titan, the first of the Titans on the list here. And if you get one of these along with the weapons to equip it, it'll cost you $840, £550 or €670. It's always kind of funny to see this one referred to as the Warhound Scout Titan. It is the smallest class of Titan, but just still absolutely towers over things like Imperial Knights and most other models in game. The way they're sold from Forge World is that you get the body of the Titan and then you buy the guns separately, each one of those like $80 or so. And there's two different versions of it, a Chaos one as you can see on the left here, and a regular Mars pattern one as you can see on the right. The 40k Titans come with their own fun princeps as well. The Mars pattern one is maybe a bit more as you'd expect, human crew and servitors commanding the Great Battle Titan. In the Chaos one, things seem to have not been going quite so well for its unlucky crew, basically shackled to it and very much built into the machine itself. In game, the Warhound Titan's 1100 points, and you can play it in an Imperial or Chaos army. I guess in theory, this one could be played in normal 2000 point competitive games, though you get into the point where even more than the Knight, it's just a bit too dominated by one single model, and realistically, they're just not that effective for the points. It's got a choice of 4 different weapon systems, maybe the turbo laser being one of the best against heavies, and the plasma blast gun being a fairly nice general purpose type ones, though for any sort of competitive play, it's just a bit limited only being able to take aim at 2 different things at the same time. As with all the Titans though, these stats are starting to get a bit next level now. Toughness 13, a big 40 wounds with a 5+ invulnerable save, and a big deadly demise of 2d6 if it happens to go down in flames. Next up, and just slightly pricier than the Warhound Titan, is the Space Marine Thunderhawk gunship. Really quite a venerable kit dating back to 40k's past at this point. There was a crazy version of this in metal, I believe, which before it was updated I think was commonly considered to be one of the most impossible kits to build, as even with pinning and careful assembly, the weight of the thing's wings could drag the entire miniature down. Thunderhawks are pretty iconic to the Space Marine way of war though. They're void-capable aircraft to deliver Astartes to a battle zone via its assault ramp, delivering a small contingent of Space Marines to the thick of the action, and providing some close fire support as it does so with its main cannon and missile batteries, and can ferry Space Marines to and from the battle barge. Really quite a cool model, and Games Workshop did release the sort of mini-me version of this in the Storm Raven, perhaps to try and capture a little bit of that appeal, but at a much smaller scale. In game, the Thunderhawk's 840 points, so again it's maybe in the realm of feasibility to field for Space Marines, though to be honest its damage and defense aren't particularly exciting for the points, it's more just for a law and feel sort of model if you want to field it I think. I feel like for the size of the thing, the Thunderhawk heavy cannon is kind of undergunned, d6 plus 6 shots at strength 10, AP 2 and damage 3. It's not nothing, but feels like that thing should hit significantly harder, and it backs that up with a Hellstrike missile battery and a bunch of secondary weapons and transports 30 Astartes. In 5th place we've got the Eldari Phantom Titan, a great Wraithbone construct of the Eldar. As with everything that they tend to do, it's a swift and agile Titan compared with the lumpen and enormous creations of the Imperium, able to move fast and gracefully across the battlefield, more akin to a normal sized warrior in its agility, and no easy thing to take down with the tough Wraithbone it's constructed from. Its name's the Phantom Titan as it contains living spirits of its previous pilots, all fused together with the current one to give the machine and its pilots an overall battle spirit, and can lay down some absolutely enormous firepower with its D-bombards or Phantom Pulsars. This one feels like it's one of the next scale up Titans versus the Warhound. A crazy 55 wounds, toughness 14 and a 4+ invulnerable save. This thing costs 2,100 points to field, so basically just 4 big fun games. And those Phantom Pulsars are getting far more into sort of anti-Titan class weaponry. With 2 of them you'd have 16 shots at strength 18, each with AP 4 and damage 6. An absolutely blistering hail of fire there. You can also give it a Wraithglaive and those D-bombard attacks, and for its secondary weapon it can have a flurry of Voidstorm missile launchers mounted either side of its head. A really big jump in terms of model pricing next, and next up we have the Reaver Titan. This one's around about $500 more than the Phantom Titan, $1,429 to be exact, translating into a bit more than £900 or €1,100. In the lore, this one's considered a bit more of a mid-scale battle titan, an older design from the Age of Darkness, mounting a good deal of flexible weapon systems, predating the mighty Warlord Titan, and having an interesting design with a bit more agility and a centrally placed plasma reactor, though this one is unusually vulnerable from strikes from behind, meaning that it's not so great for operating in close environments. I quite like its brooding and menacing faceplate, making it feel like it's perhaps hunching at the edge of the battlefield and blasting away with some terrifying fire. Kind of cool they've got the size comparison here as well to a Rhino and a Land Raider. The Land Raider doesn't even get close to knee level, and the Rhino could be crushed under one of its massive feet in a single tread. Like the Warhound, this one has also got an alternative Chaos design, swapping out the slightly more clean and Mechanicus style plates for a whole load of twisted, spiked and mutated battle armor, plus having different options for its missile launcher and a claw versus a gauntlet. This one's also stylishly modelling its Gatling blaster as well. Again, it also has a Princeps crew in the head section, which I think is kind of fun, commanding the Titan with its screens and readouts there as it stomps into battle. In game, in terms of points and things, it's a similar sort of class to the Phantom Titan, 2,200 points. This one a big 60 wounds at toughness 14. And the weaponry is definitely next level compared with the Warhound. This one can mount Reaver Volcano cannons for D3+1 shots at strength 24, AP 5 and damage 14, which looks ruinous to other super heavies, or things like laser blasters, melter cannons or Gatling blasters if you want firepower that's got a bit more threat against medium infantry as well. The Power Fist looks kind of crazy as well. 6 attacks with damage 14 in close combat is scary enough. Next up and third on the list, I feel is one that a fair few people might not recognise quite so well, the Sokar Stormbird. This one's a pretty enormous scale Imperial flyer, $1,580 or just over £1,000 or 1,260 euros. This one was at least a relatively recent kit by Games Workshop standards in around about 2016. Its lore and backstory is that it's basically an enormous attack lander that was the precursor to the smaller and more widely produced Thunderhawk gunship, maybe with a bit more of a focus on being a Titanic transport as opposed to mounting a big primary weapon as well. As with the Mastodon, this is more one that's aimed at Horus Heresy games as opposed to 40k. Here's a few more pictures of it, quite a mighty beast, and I quite like the Space Marine sort of revolving gun turrets with the dual heavy bolters that you can see on each side. A massive great big quad engine design with a bunch of high power missiles on the side. Here's a picture that maybe conveys the scale of it a bit better. Truly apocalyptic in size, and you can see the comparison to the standard Marines and Dreadnoughts there. This one's fielded with its access hatches down at the side. As mentioned, it's primarily aimed at the Heresy, but it does have some 40k Legends rules as well. Compared with the Thunderhawk, it is more heavily armoured. It has an extra 10 wounds and toughness 13 versus 12. It gets a 4+ invulnerable save against ranged attacks, though it doesn't have quite as many weapon systems, with a whole bunch of its twin heavy bolters, and the main threat coming from that Hellstrike missile battery. Its transport capacity is even more cavernous than the Thunderhawk's 55 Adeptus Astartes infantry models, and can choose to transport a Rhino in place of 25 models, so you can have models that are in a transport that sits inside another transport. Next up is a miniature that should in theory be third on the list, but technically it's not counted for this one, given that it's not currently on sale, and that's the Warbringer Nemesis Titan. Currently it's not on sale from the Games Workshop web store, though a couple of the upgrades are, including the enormous head it has. This one was again one of Games Workshop's more recently released Titans. It was around about $1,900 when it was on sale. It looks like this one has been slightly on and off in the Games Workshop web store over the past year or so, coming back in stock and then being removed, and people aren't too sure why. Some Reddit discussions supposedly thought that it might have some sort of issues with its mould. In the lore and background, in theory it's supposed to be the Imperium's heavy bombardment style Titan, mounting a massive great big primary weapon system above its head there on the top mounted gun, and then having sort of Reaver class weapon systems on its arm guns. It's also seriously quite heavily armoured, having some up armoured top plates versus the Reaver, plus some anti-air defence as well, where you can see the batteries firing out at the back. Probably not the best thing to get into a ranged firefight with. That just leaves us with two left though, and in second place for most expensive model from Games Workshop at the moment, it's the Tau Empire Manta. This one's another level of scale compared with quite a lot of the other ones that we've seen so far. A miniature that costs a ridiculous $2,000 or £1,300. Kind of crazy in its size, with a 34-inch wingspan, and it has a cavernous hold, which comes with several squads worth of seated fire warriors, and enough hold space for 4 Tau tanks, such as Hammerheads or Devilfish. Basically the idea is that this thing can deploy entire 100 cadres worth of Tau to the field, and use its railguns and heavy firepower to take down other threats like Imperial Titans, being one of the Tau's favoured ways of dealing with these. The model scale is kind of ridiculous, kind of impractical to play in any one game with all that weighty resin hovering above the rest of the battlefield. I can't help but think that moving it around the table would be a bit of a nervy experience. For its stats in game, it's around about 2,100 points, a big 60 wounds at toughness 14 with a 2+ save, so it isn't going to go down too easily. And as you'd expect with the Tau, it's kind of covered in guns, 2 heavy rail cannons with big damage 12 shots, 6 ion cannons that you normally get on 1 hammerhead each, and 2 long-barreled burst cannon arrays, so a total of 64 shots at strength 6 AP1. It's also got 10 Seeker missiles as well, just in case you wanted an enormous alpha strike. Perhaps the transport capacity is its craziest stats though. You could have 200 Tau Empire infantry there, and those 4 Devilfish, Skyrays or Hammerheads, plus a strike force of Crisis suits. It could also carry 2 Crisis suit squads, each with a commander attached. Again, kind of a crazy, ridiculous, big fun model that's meant for ridiculous scale games, or just as a display piece, but kind of cool that such big things get in-game rules. Finally, and I suspect surprising very few people, we have the Warlord Titan, pretty well known to be the biggest and most expensive Warhammer 40k miniature. This one's brought in really quite a lot of sub-assemblies, first the main body, then the 2 arm-mounted weapon systems, then the top-mounted guns or missile launcher, and the head is separate as well. Overall it costs a crazy $2,500 or around £1,600 sterling. You can see a scale size comparison chart here, a little bit bigger than that Warbringer Titan just mentioned, comfortably dwarfing the Reaver Titan, and a standard Questoris Knight comes up to around about knee level on this thing, which I think helps to underline the scale of it, given that Questoris Knights are pretty big Titanic super heavy units in 40k. Here's a few closer shots of a few of the sub-assemblies. I do quite like that enormous Ariok Power Claw that you can arm it with. I did a giveaway for one of these on the channel in the past, and when that Power Claw arrived with the person, they said that it was kind of impressive as it was bigger than his partner's hand. In game, as you'd imagine, it's got some truly obscene stats, 3,500 points for 100 wounds worth of toughness 16 adamantium, and then absolutely covered in weapon systems that have quite a lot of options. Perhaps the ones that feel the most truly ridiculous might be those Bellicosa Volcano Cannons, D3+3 shots at strength 32, AP 5 and damage 18, so scary enough to be wounding other enemy warlords on a 2+ there, which is mad. And that Ariok Power Claw in close combat only gets 6 attacks but hits at damage 24, kind of crazy to be able to just crush something like an Imperial or Chaos Knight in one single attack. I do find its special rule just kind of hilarious as well. You have all this ridiculous adamantium might, and then its special rule is Wrath of the Omnissiah. You choose one thing that it's shot to take a battle shock test. I do like the way that it just makes literally one enemy unit a little bit nervous. And finally, for an honourable mention, I thought I might just mention the WETA Workshop statues that Games Workshop's partnered with. These things aren't actually miniatures for in-game and are sort of 1:6 scale statue type things. So there's one of Abaddon the Despoiler, stands around 3 feet tall, and he's around $1,900 US. Admittedly, he's not quite on the same level as things like the Warlord Titan or the Manta, though he really isn't all that far behind. I just thought that they'd be worth a mention given that they're technically Warhammer 40k miniatures, completely official and everything, and are rivaling Games Workshop's fancy Titans for the most expensive things that you can buy. The idea that they're big display pieces and come hand painted. In any case though, I'll leave that there for this one. Hope you enjoyed a quick look through some of Games Workshop's very most expensive models out there in 40k. Look forward to hearing if you've seen any of these in person on the tabletop or at big events or anything, or if you've played any games with or against them yourself. If you've enjoyed the video, then feel free to subscribe to WETA Tactics. I'll certainly keep the regular 40k videos coming. I do tend to post new ones just about every day. Finally, if you have been enjoying all the videos on the channel, I would just like to mention that WETA Tactics does have a Patreon page as well, and you can find that linked in the video description down below. Channel patrons do get a fair few advantages, seeing certain videos early, regular votes to see what sort of things come next on the channel, and automatic entry into the regular prize giveaways with a chance to win some big model kits each month. If any of that sounds good to you, or you'd just like to help support, the link is down in the video description. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.